Okay, so let's dive into this. We're going to unpack a really interesting way to think about our world today, a world that feels, incredibly complex. It's a framework that looks at our biggest challenges through a lens of ancient wisdom, offering a way to find our footing when it feels like the ground is constantly shifting underneath us. And to get started, we're going to look at something we all know, especially at the beginning of the year, the New Year's resolution. But it turns out, this whole ritual of trying to improve ourselves, well, it has a surprisingly deep and ancient history. I mean, this tradition goes way, way back. We're talking 4,000 years ago. The ancient Babylonians were making promises to their gods that they'd pay back their debts. Fast forward a bit, and you've got the Romans making promises to Janus, their two-faced god of beginnings. Even medieval knights got in on it, renewing their vows of chivalry at the start of the year. So this is not some modern fad, it's a deeply human thing. So you see, this deep need to just stop, reflect, make a plan, and try to be better, it's woven right into our history. And that instinct, that habit, is probably more important right now than it has ever been, especially as we try to deal with the unique challenges of our time. So let's zoom out from that personal habit of making resolutions to the dizzying complexity of the world we all live in. If you've ever just looked around and felt like everything is tangled together and overwhelmingly complicated, you are definitely not wrong. And a huge reason for this feeling of confusion is the total fracture of our media. I mean, think about it. Not that long ago, there were basically three major TV networks. They created a shared story, a kind of common sense of reality. But today we live in these algorithm-driven feeds that create totally separate and often pretty distorted realities for each of us. We've lost that single common sense of truth. And this brings us to this absolutely brilliant term. It reportedly came up in a conversation between the author Thomas Friedman and a top research executive at Microsoft. It's just one phrase, but wow, it perfectly captures the feeling of our time. So what exactly is the Polyscene? Well, it's an era where all the simple binary systems, left versus right, us versus them, black and white, they're all being replaced by these multiple super interconnected and complex systems. It's a state where it feels like everything is influencing everything else, and it just shatters that simple coherence we used to have. And this poly effect, it's transforming every single part of our lives. It's not just one thing. Climate change isn't just a problem, it's a polycrisis of all these interlocking issues. Geopolitics isn't bipolar anymore, it's polycentric. Our societies are fragmenting into what are called polymorphic mosaics. The complexity is just everywhere. Okay, so if we're living in this chaotic polyscene, how on earth do we find our way? Well, the source material we're looking at suggests we turn to an ancient text, not for easy answers, but as a kind of guidance plan for navigating all this turmoil. And this really is the central question for us today, isn't it? In a world with endless information, with all these shattered realities, where do we even find our grounding? How do we get our bearings when the map itself keeps changing? The first part of this guidance plan is an ancient concept called logos, or the word, from the Gospel of John. You can almost think of it like the universe's underlying operating system. It's this divine logic that brings order out of chaos and gives us a stable foundation we can actually build on. The second part of the plan gives us a framework for hope, and it's drawn from the letter to the Ephesians. It lays out a pretty clear four-step path, from being adopted into a family, to being redeemed, to having a much bigger purpose revealed, and then finally, to living a hopeful life that has a clear direction. So, that's all the theory. But how does this ancient guidance actually apply to the really charged political and social debates we're all facing today? Let's get practical and ground this with a real-world case study. So the source uses this contemporary political statement as a test case. It's a really powerful claim, and it was met with a ton of applause. But this explainer asks us to pause and look a little deeper. So the very first step in this discernment process is to just ask a simple question. Is this claim actually accurate? Is it factually, historically, and legally true? Well, following this guidance plan means you go back to the foundational texts. And in this case, the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment is crystal clear. Congress cannot establish a state religion. That directly contradicts the claim of being an officially Christian nation. And this is the crucial point. The nation was founded on the principle of religious freedom, not on a specific religion. James Madison, one of the key architects here, championed what he called the right of conscience, and he insisted that faith has to be a matter of personal conviction, never something forced on people. So this leads to the source's core call to action. It argues that the role of people of faith isn't to seek political dominance or to enforce one view. Instead, it's to act as reconcilers, to speak the truth, absolutely, but also to mend divides and repair the tears in our shared human fabric. Okay, finally, let's explore this really powerful theological idea that helps frame our role in this whole ongoing story. It helps us understand where we fit in and what we're actually supposed to be doing in this messy, complicated polyscene. The concept is called already, but not yet. It's this idea that a new, better way of being in the world has already started, but it's not yet complete. We all live right in that tension, in that space between the world as it is and the world as it's meant to be. And our purpose, then, is found right there in that gap. We're called to be agents of that fulfillment, to act in ways that help build toward that not yet future, right here and now, in the already. And you might think, wow, that's a huge job. But the amazing thing is, it doesn't require some monumental act. The whole idea is that it starts with just one small step, one act of healing, one word of encouragement, one moment of bridging a divide. It all contributes to this larger mission. So the real takeaway here is that our daily actions have profound meaning. In a world that feels like it's fracturing into a million pieces, our role is to be the people who mend and heal and console, to be the light that helps bridge all those gaps. And that leaves us with a final question to take with you. In your own life, in your own corner of the world, living in this complex polyscene era, what does it mean for you to be a reconciler? How can you help bridge that gap between the already and the not yet?